Today I have a very easy to make dress to share with you with a fake wrap bodice made out of knit fabrics. Sneak peek, lots of interesting things to see, so keep watching. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina. This is Lifting Pins and Needles, a channel all about sewing, limitless sewing. If you're always stopping by, welcome back, and if you're brand new to the channel and you like to sew, you will see a lot of that here with twice weekly videos full of sewing content for you. It's my goal that with every video there's a lot of practical aspects for you to enjoy. Today I have a super cool dress to share with you, easy to make, love how it looks. And in fact, it's not the first time I've made this pattern, but I hadn't made it in this version. I was a pattern tester for the Willow wrap dress and top from Love Notions back in March 2018, around there. And at that opportunity, I just tested the peplum version. I will link above the video I have about those tops, super flattering. It's what I needed at that point in time. I needed tops with long sleeves, and that's what I made back then. But I always knew I wanted to revisit this pattern and go for the dress. And that's what I've done just a few days ago. The two fronts are crossed over and the seam is met on the side seam. For the necklines, there are two neckline depths. If you like lower cut, there is a line there for you to cut there. If you want a bit more cover higher, there's another line, so that you'll see two lines on the bodices, and I think that's great because you can choose what cover you want. I'm always more on the more modest side, so I always go with a higher coverage, As always, there's lots of sleeve options, short, elbow, 3/4 length, long, and there's a flutter sleeve option too. What goes attached to the bodice is a skirt that I would say it's like a quarter circle skirt. It's my favorite type of skirt out of all the skirts there is. I mean, I like the straight pencil skirt, and then the second favorite comes this type of skirt because it's got a bit of flow, a bit of volume, but not excessive volume. So I love the drafting of these types of skirts because they don't take up too much fabric as well. To change the way that this dress looks, there are three options for this bodice. You can add a flounce to the neckline there. There is a pattern piece and instructions to add that. I wouldn't choose that for myself. Having a larger bust, I think any accent that you put on the neckline will sort of enhance that area. But I think it would be an excellent choice for someone with a smaller bust or a pear shape. I think it's a great option that would help balance out a figure in the upper body. So that option is there. I think visually it's adorable. I just can't pull it off, without drawing too much attention to my bust. The other option, and it's the one that I've chosen for this dress, is that on one of the sides there are little pleats on the side. I think that is super flattering, little pleats here just around your midsection. And then the other bodice is just a regular bodice. It's one pattern piece that you cut twice and then you just cross over, So lots of options as always to make the dress that you really want to have and make it appropriate for summer or winter or whatever, The recommended fabrics are medium weight knit fabrics with 25 to 50% stretch. The fabrics mentioned here are double brush poly, some jersey blends, cotton spandex, Ponte Roma, that type of fabric. Now, I didn't make my dress in any of these types of fabrics. I would say my fabric is more light to medium weight knit at rayon spandex, and I would not recommend you make this dress with a typical rayon spandex. I did choose this one because I like the print, and I think this specific rayon spandex is a bit heavier than other ones I've worked with, and I did a trick to fix the problem that rayon spandex creates. Well, I did several modifications to the dress construction in order to adapt to the fabric that I've chosen, because that's what I like to do, limitless sewing, there's no limits. Sometimes when you don't have the appropriate fabric, there's something you can do to make it work, and that's what I've done in this case. Today, this pattern has been re-released in new sizing. So previously, the sizes went up to 3X, and now from today onwards, the size goes up to 5X. So that will take you to a bust of 57.5 and hips of 59.5 now, and this pattern can suit more people. As always, Love Notions recommends choosing the size based on the high bust. There is a standard bust option provided and a full bust option provided. So depending on the difference between the high and the full bust, they recommend one version or the other to get a better fit without having to do full bust adjustments. There is also a bicep measurement there on the sizing chart that could be super handy. This dress, because it's drafted for knit fabric, has negative ease drafted into it, which means that the finished garment measurements are smaller than your body measurements. And that's why they recommend that the fabric has stretch, 25 to 50%. So depending on the size that you are, you will find that at the bust, you will have 2 to 3 inches of negative ease, meaning that the fabric is going to stretch to allow it to fit your circumference at the bust, and that's fine because it's a knit fabric. And especially for this design, you need the bodice to be fitted to you, so that's a negative ease there. And at the waist, you will find 0 to 3 inches of negative ease as well. So fitted bodice, and then because the skirt flares out, there's positive ease there, 10 to 11 inches. In Up Close and So Personal, you're going to see a lot of sewing aspects as usual. Because of my fabric choice, I made some different decisions in construction, and I also made length adjustments. These pants are drafted for a woman that measures 5'5" and I'm 5'8". And because I've made so many of them, I sort of know exactly the areas of the bodice that I need to make adjustments to fit my body, and the distribution of my length on my upper body as well. Because I chose rayon spandex, I'm partially lining this bodice to fix the problem of the fabric being super clingy and showing a bit of lumps and bumps that no one wants people to see, you know. So you're gonna see how I fix that really easily. And I changed slightly the binding technique used for the neckline because of my fabric choice. So let's hop into all of that. This is the bodice of the standard bust, and this side is the one that has the pleats. So I measured, there is a little bust point mark on the pattern. I measured from there down, discounting seam allowance, and I need to lengthen the bodice anyway, but this is the area I need to lengthen it in, up here on the bust area. There is a shorten and lengthen line that I would use if I only needed length towards the waist, and I thought that was going to fit me okay. But I am longer in this area of my upper body than most patterns, so I added the length I need here, and this is 1 1/4 inch. Now because this neckline is a wrap neckline, it really distorted quite a bit when I added the length. I kept the grain line the same, as you can see right there, and everything matches there. This part here was easy to true, I just followed the same curve. Over here the neckline has 2 neckline depths. So this first line that comes here and continues there because it got distorted is the lower neckline, and the one that's I cut is the higher neckline. Finishes there and then kept going there. So the green line is where I just drew the higher neckline here, and I just made it up to there where it continues. I'm just going to cut that out there. For the pleated bodice version, I just need to cut a single layer of the pleated side, and that goes on one of the sides, the one that goes on top, and the one that wraps underneath is just the normal standard bodice without the pleats. And when I added length there, this also happened. But what I did here was take the first neckline I trued and then just replicated it over there and drew the same green line there so that they match. So I've got the green line there, and I'm just going to trim that one off too. So if I put both necklines on top of each other, they match. They're the same depth, the same shape. The plain bodice, the normal one that you would make on the view that's just got both the same, you'd cut 2 of these. But because I'm making the pleated one, I'm just going to cut a single one of these and a single one of these. And this is the one that goes on the top. The pleated bit there is the one that overlays on top, and then it just sort of drapes that way. I have the back piece extended there underneath, and then I have one bodice there, the first one going right sides together with the back, and then the one that goes on top. So I've got that there, and I have to sew shoulder seams, but I'm going to be lining partially the bodice, only the back. So I've got a lining piece, self-lining. Now I couldn't cut another back on the fold, so I've just cut one with a seam. This is the lining, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to be placing this one, the lining right sides together with the main back, with the bodice pieces in there. the front bodice pieces sandwiched in between. So I'm going to be matching those shoulder seams there. So I've got a lining back, a front bodice, and the back right there, and I'm going to sew that together, and this will have the shoulder seams enclosed but still leave the neckline raw. That's what I want it to be. After sewing those shoulder seams, this seam here is enclosed within these 2 layers of the back there. So the seam is in there, so it's going to be nice and neat. The back pieces are identical, they're just one on top of each other now. And now I have 2 bodice pieces, one that overlaps the other. This is the one that has the pleats. I have marked the pleats there, the red bits there are little pleats, there are 4 of them. And I'm going to pleat them, and then this total length here should match this total length. This is the shorter, the plain bodice side. All that excess is going to be removed by these 4 little pleats. After getting all these little pleats assembled there and basted, I can forget about them, and then I have all this neckline to bind with the binding. So that'll be next, the little pleats and then the binding. I have pleated them. There's 4 little pleats there. I'm going to be pressing these up this way on the wrong side. When you look at the pleats on the right side, the pleats will be looking down, you know. And I've just compared them, the 2 sides, and they match perfect. So just a little easy step there, 4 tiny pleats, and I'm just going to baste these together there. Not these 2 seams, of course, I was just comparing the length. Just on the pleated side, I'm going to baste these pleats so that they don't go anywhere, and then I can move on to the binding on the neckline. I have basted those on, they're not going to move anywhere. And that's how they look on the wrong side. So the volume is going up, but on the right side you're going to see that the pleat is actually pointing down, and that's the most flattering way. This whole neckline here I have divided in quarters. So I have my center back there marked with a pin. Around there is the other quarter, and around there. So I've got 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections, and 4 sections. And the band is shorter, of course, to keep the tension and to help this neckline lie flat and not gape. And I drafted my own to match with the binding that I want to do. It's 1.5 inches wide. You can see on the cutting mat, 1.5 inches wide. And the total length here, I got by measuring all this length of the neckline and multiplying by 85%. So it's 15% shorter, and I've divided this also into 4. So all I'm going to do now is fold these wrong sides together like that, and I've got my quarters marked there with red pins that I'm going to be matching onto the neckline, and then I'll be stretching slightly the binding while I'm sewing it onto the neckline, never stretching the neckline, just this, so that they match and they're the same size. This is the neckline here, the center back there. I'm treating this as one, you know, the back is lined, but I left the neckline raw, and I'm just treating this area as one piece. And I've got my binding folded onto each other, wrong sides together, and I've matched those pins there. And then the next quarter of the binding I've matched to the quarter of the neckline, and from here I've matched to the end. Here you can see that the binding is slightly shorter, and then I will have to stretch slightly the binding to sew this on. So I'll be doing this carefully all the way around. I'll be using a small seam allowance, less than 3/8, so that the binding ends up being about 1/2 inch wide, like that. That's the finished width I wanted, because then it's going to be folded on into the inside. So I'll probably just be guiding the edge of my presser foot to the edge of the fabric while I sew. I'll be just using a straight stitch for this. Now be very careful to not stretch the neckline, just stretch the binding to match the length of the neckline slightly. I used an 85% measurement to make it smaller because this is rayon spandex, it's really stretchy. If it was a thicker fabric, more medium weight with less recovery, I would not make it so short. center back there. Now I did have to do a little seam on the middle of this binding because the pattern piece was super long to cut on the fold, and I didn't have a place on the fabric to cut it on the fold, so I just have a sneaky seam there. So this seam that attaches the binding to the neckline, I'm going to trim by half, and then I'm going to fold this over on top of the seam allowance and understitch this binding on, and then fold back, and that will ensure that the binding is going to stay inside and not be visible on the neckline. So I've trimmed down that seam allowance, and now I'm just going to understitch this. I've got the seam allowance there. I'm going to fold the binding on top of it, keeping the binding on top of the seam allowance, and I'm going to sew on the edge. So that's how that understitching is going to look, and then I'll be folding this binding towards the inside, and that will ensure that I'm going to have a really clean edge there with no binding visible. It's going to be really clean there. So I'll just continue this and then fold that and top stitch. I've turned the binding onto the inside of the neckline. That's the little bit where the pleats have pressed that. You can see it's a bit crumpled because the binding is a bit shorter, but it's all fixable when you press it. I have already pressed this other side and it's looking really nice, really flat, really neat. I have hand basted that on so I don't have to worry about pins. So I'll just finish pressing this neckline, and then I can just go ahead and top stitch the edge there carefully without stretching this out as I sew. That's how it's going to look on the inside. The narrow one there's understitched. This is the one I'm sewing the binding on, and on the right side it's just going to have one stitch there. Now that the neckline binding is done and everything, I can overlap these two front bodice pieces. The one with the pleats obviously is the one that goes on top, and the simple one is the one that's on the bottom. Now these two edges here at the bottom need to meet. They will be sewn on together. This is a fake wrap dress, so this will all be closed. After matching these two together, this is the skirt piece that will just go sewn on there. So basically the skirt on there, right sides together, and I just have to do that sort of seam there to unite the bodice to the front skirt. And all the way over here is the back. Mine is double because I wanted to have a double back. So the back skirt will be sewn onto there. Then I'll have like this full extended thing, and all I'll have to do is the side seams and the binding on the neckline. I'm going to do mine sleeveless. Now that I've sewn both skirt pieces to the front and the back bodice separately, I just have dangling side seams here. Now these little bits here, I have to match them well where this overlaps here on both sides there, and the other one is under there where the pleats are, so I'll be really careful to do that accurately and match the seams there of the skirts on the sides. So just two more side seams, and then I'm going to try it on and see about the armscye. This is the regular armscye that would have a sleeve on it. I just always cut that, and then on myself I see if I need to reshape, or you know, otherwise I just have to repeat what I did to the neckline there on the armscye. So that will be the binding there for the sleeveless one. This is my dress. I have made a dress in this type of fabric before in a different colorway with blue and orange, and at the time I bought the two colorways because I really like them. It looks really like, I don't know, like lava falling down a volcano or something, and it's a rayon spandex I really love. The back piece you can see is the same, you know, as the outer side, but actually in the inside the fabric is white and it's printed on there. and I decided to line the back part of the bodice to make it more stable. So by just lining it and putting 2 pieces there, it just creates a double layer, more support, more thickness, that is going to turn this fabric into a medium to heavyweight fabric on the back. And I think the back is the area where you usually struggle with showing little bits of lumps and bumps, bra straps, whatnot, you know. The front is crossed over, and so that in itself helps with this fabric being a bit more lighter weight than it should. And the binding technique that you saw there was just using the fabric double, because in the pattern you have a long strip that you do essentially the same thing I did but on a single layer, and because this fabric was, you know, it wasn't gonna work, I did it in a double layer by folding it onto itself. What you see there folded is 2 layers of the fabric, as you saw in the technique video, but essentially it's the same thing, and it's been top stitched on. I'm working with a machine now that I can't control stitch length when I sew. So it's a manual machine, very basic settings, and I can't get a stretch stitch or a zigzag stitch small enough in order for me to do stretch stitch, zigzag type stitches. I can't do that. So I'm just going with it. I'm sewing everything with a straight stitch, and I'm confident I'm not going to be popping out seams. For me, it's never really been an issue of me popping seams when I sew with straight stitch on knits. It has never been an issue for me. But if I were on my machine, I would actually be doing a zigzag stitch on the side seams, on these seams, you know, at the waist and everything. But I would have kept the straight stitch on the neckline and the shoulder seams, you know. As you saw, the dress was super easy to construct. I didn't modify the skirt length. I think the skirt length originally for a 5'5" woman is meant to hit sort of mid-knee or just below the knee. But because I'm taller, it just naturally hits above the knee where I like my skirts to be. So I didn't really have to lengthen that. I did measure the skirt, and I know a measurement in my head that I like my skirts to be, you know, finished length of 58 centimeters. I think that's, I'll put on the screen the inches. I can't do the maths right now. But I didn't need to modify. All I needed to modify was around the bust area and add the length from here to there. I didn't modify the armscye at all. This is the armscye that you would use to attach on the sleeve. I just cut it just as is, and I tried it on, and I like the coverage, and I didn't decide to make any modifications to that. And the binding I used at the armscye is the same that I used on the neckline, as you can see there on that side better. This is how the dress looks inside out. It's super neat. You can see the seam uniting the bodices to the skirt there. I decided to press my seams open on the side seam. I think it looks neater and just looks nicer, you know. The binding there and the back, you can see it's double layer right there, so you can see the main fabric there. While doing that, you saw that the shoulder seam is enclosed there. Super neat. I love that. I love doing things like this. It just gives the dress something extra, you know. And hem, normal hem, just turned up, serged, and a twin needle. There's a twin needle there. Super neat. Here you can see the total length. I am standing in, there's like a vine here for grapes, and it's very early and it's freezing. But here I am to show you the dress. You can see where the length of the skirt is and the amount of volume it has. Lovely. I love this because it's like fit and flare, but just a bit of flare, not that much flare, you know. So I think it's an extremely flattering dress and totally my style. I love this dress a lot. I don't know why I didn't make it sooner, really. Up closer, you can see the bodice hits right at my natural waist there. So by adding length up here on the area that I needed it for the bust volume, I ended up lengthening the bodice anyway because I needed that. I just needed the length in the upper area here instead of just adding onto the shorten and lengthen line that was down here. So it just depends on how you're made, you know. So it's right there at my natural waist. The little pleating here, you can't really see because it's a print, but I just think it's adorable and really flattering. It helps disguise, you know, any little thing that you might have going on here, you know. At the back, having lined the back, you can see my back looks really nice and smooth, you know, you can't see the bra straps and things here at the back. So I think doing that was a good solution. Up closer here on the top, you can see how modest this neckline is. This is the higher cut neckline. There is a lower cut that you can like have it overlap a bit lower, but this is just perfect for me. It creates a really nice V that is not showing anything. Because I cut the binding shorter, you know, 85%, it's sitting nice and flat and flush to my body, like there's no gaping or anything, you know. And that's the length of a decision in bands or binding I make individually for each fabric and how I see it feels. You know, for other fabrics that don't stretch that much, I wouldn't make it 85% from the length. I'd probably make it 90. So it's just a thing about feel, you know, and I like how that looks there. The armscye that I used without modification is perfect. Great coverage there. Underneath there I have nothing showing, you know. So this is just a regular armscye that you would attach a sleeve on. The only difference is that I put a bit of binding on there and I lost a bit of width there, about 3/8 of an inch when attaching the binding. Another option if you like sleeveless like me.
Don't you think this is starting to wear on me? You've been raining down like hail. I'm weak. I have tried to give you my soul, but you can't love something you.
This pattern has a discounted sale for the whole week, 20% off, as all new pattern releases are. This is not a new pattern release, it's a re-release. But for today, Friday only, it's at a discounted price of 50% off. So $5. So it's a steal. It's a great dress, great fitting dress with lots of options. I'm sure you'll love it. And if you do like it, you can purchase the pattern through my affiliate link. As always, it's in the description box and it doesn't affect your total purchase cost, but it does help me as I receive a tiny commission from that sale. I really hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, and tap on the bell so you don't miss when videos go live. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon next week with more sewing fun. Happy sewing. Bye.